Depending on how one distinguishes a different Bible version from a revision of an existing Bible version, there are as many as 50 different English versions of the Bible. The question then arises for us, is there really a need for so many different English versions of the same Bible? The answer, of course, is no. There is no need for 50 different English versions of the Bible. This is especially true when we consider that there are hundreds of languages into which the entire Bible has not yet even been translated. At the same time, there's nothing wrong with there being multiple versions of the Bible in a given language. In fact, multiple versions of the Bible can actually be an aid in understanding the message of the Bible. Now, there are two primary reasons for different English versions of the Bible. First, over time, obviously the English language changes and develops, and that makes updates to the English version necessary. Take, for example, if a modern reader were to pick up a 1611 version of the King James Version of the Bible, he or she would find it to be virtually unreadable. Everything from spelling to syntax to grammar to phraseology is very different. In fact, linguists tell us that the English language has changed more in the last 400 years than the Greek language has changed over the last 2,000 years. And several times in church history, believers have gotten used to a particular version of the Bible and become fiercely loyal to it, resisting any attempt to update it or to revise it. For example, this occurred with the Septuagint, which was the Greek version of the Bible, and then the Latin translations of that in the Vulgate, and more recently, the King James Version. Now, fierce loyalty to a particular version of the Bible could be considered illogical and sometimes is even counterproductive. For when the Bible was written, it was written in the common language of the people of the time. And so when the Bible is translated into a language for us, it should be translated into how a people or a language group actually speaks and reads at the time it's translated, not how that group may have spoken 100 or hundreds of years ago. Now, secondly, there are different translation methodologies for how best to render the original Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek into English. Some Bible versions translate literally, that is, word for word. This is commonly known as formal equivalence. Some Bible versions, on the other hand, translated a more thought-for-thought methodology. This is commonly known as dynamic equivalence. Most different English versions of the Bible are at different points on the formal and dynamic equivalence spectrum. The New American Standard Bible, for example, and the King James Version would be to the far end of the formal equivalence side, while paraphrases such as the Living Bible and the Message would be the far end of the dynamic equivalence side. Now, the advantage of formal equivalence is that it does minimize the translator inserting his or her own interpretations into the passages of Scripture. But the disadvantage of formal equivalence is that it often produces a rather woodenly literal translation that is not easily readable or understandable. The advantage of a dynamic equivalence translation is that it usually produces a more readable and understandable Bible version, and its disadvantage is that it sometimes can result in what is known as a "this is what I think it means" version instead of what it really says. Now, neither method is right or wrong, and the best Bible version is most likely produced through a balance of the two methodologies. Now, listed in a chart in the resources for this section of the course is a list of the most common available English versions. As Episcopalians, we have formally approved the New Revised Standard Version for use in our liturgical books and any formal church publications. While you are certainly free to use any version for your personal devotions, readings, and prayers, the NRSV is the version currently approved for public prayer and use in the Revised Common Lectionary. And for that reason, it's going to be the we will be using in our study.